welcome to the Horror House Podcast. I'm Dave.
I am Chris. We're two dudes that like to talk about horror from movies to real life. And this week in the Horror House, we're back to the movies with a pairing that was once thought impossible, Dave. And almost was impossible.
Almost, but I always dreamed of this. I don't know how many times I argued this battle as much as I argued Bret Hart versus Undertaker. And probably a lot more.
We are talking Freddy versus Jason from 2003 this week in the Horror House. Lot to say on this one. Lot to say. And we'll come back around to wrestling as well. But first, before we get too ahead of ourselves here, we are trying to get to 100 followers on Spotify. So click that follow button, man. It's not that hard. All your friends are doing it.
All the cool kids do it. Why can't you?
You want to be a cool kid. Everybody wants to be cool. So click that follow button. And let your friends know about that follow button as well. Maybe they want to follow us. You don't know. You just tell them. Spread the word.
Chris, I don't want to hold back. I want to get an ad and get back to the mono dream battle of 80s slasher icon, Freddy versus Jason.
We are back, and it is time to talk about, I think, for both of us, one of our most anticipated movies at the time, Freddy versus Jason. Let's just talk about that to start it off with, our anticipation. And just, I mean, this movie was a long time coming and development hell, and being owned by two different studios. When the idea first started to really, they're like, let's do this. No, fuck you, I own this. Fuck you, I own this. And how that goes. Rich people ruin it for everybody. But
well, and there's so much to work out. Like, even the fact that it happened at all is amazing, because you know that one studio wants Freddy to win, and one studio wants Jason to win, and one studio is fighting because they think they have the rights to Jason. So, like, even Jason's rights aren't like clear path to
it. I don't think they even still are, and there was just a big fucking fight over it in court recently.
Yeah.
Poor man Jason. But even it was either around the time of Jason Takes Manhattan or just before, which was that Friday 8, I think, is when it first started trying to be, I think, worked out between the two sides, and just kept falling apart one way or another. And that was 89-ish. So it took another 14 years before the movie finally came out that they started to try to get going. And of course, New Line finally got the rights to Jason at one point. I don't think they have them anymore, but the big scene, everybody, as a kid, I don't even remember how old I was, but Jason Goes to Hell, right? The fucking pulling the mask, or the claw coming out, pulling the Jason mask down to wherever. Was fuel.
I got so excited when I saw that, man. That
I did too.
When that happened, it was like, oh yeah, it's going to happen. And then, what's the timeline between that happening and us actually getting this?
Jason Goes to 10 years. 10 years. Jason Goes to Hell was 1993, and then Freddy vs. Jason finally hit the theaters 2003. So, little trivia, it was Kane Hodder that played the Freddy in that scene, pulling the mask down. So he's played both Jason and Freddy. He likes to credit himself with that. And why wouldn't you?
I would live on that cred. Whatever, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah. So God, I think of all time, this is my most anticipated movie. Waiting for this, I would buy Fangorias every month. Pre-internet, kids. You didn't have any way to know about stuff like this it was being worked on, what was happening, and really Fangoria for me was the only way to find out. And sometimes it'd be a paragraph, sometimes it'd be a little more, sometimes it'd be less. But Fangoria was my only source of information for this movie for years.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know the struggle, but the struggle was real.
Yeah.
So the speculation, I think I've talked about, and probably get some of the details wrong. Don't do drugs, kids. But me and my friends, we used to argue in the 80s. Like, we would argue this out. Who would win? Freddy, Jason. Honestly, Mike Myers rarely come into the conversation. Every once in a while, my cousin Kenny would be like, "You wait till you hear about this Corey kid." But
Kenny was to blame for Corey.
Yeah, early stand, hipster Kenny. Damn it, Kenny.
Let's do it.
This guy, I got a book. This guy that comes to the junkyard bought me a book, and it talks about Corey. That is the most inside joke ever told. Like 5 people will understand that.
But you would discuss.
I'm not sure that's even Chris,
or not discuss, but you know, the back and forth of friends of who would win this.
We would talk about like who would win this fight. We talked about, oh, there's going to be exactly 13 Friday the 13th. Like, nobody knew that shit. Nobody. Right. As long as they were making money, they were going to keep making them. There's going to be 27 Nightmare on Elm Streets. Why 27? Like, what's that got to do with anything? I some of those things I never understood. I think the biggest thing that, to be honest, the biggest thing that kept Michael Myers out of these kinds of discussions is where they went with the cult of Michael Myers. To be honest, that fucking ruined in my circle. Like, that did not expand the lore of Michael Myers. That made it like,
right.
That made it cringe before there was such thing as cringe.
I don't know. There's just something about Freddy and Jason just seems to work together. I don't know. We'll talk later about an alternate ending that was considered at one point. But yeah, Michael Myers never seemed to make sense in this equation to me. Even before not even considering the cult, like just something
that he doesn't fit.
It's just too different or something. Maybe their methods just don't line up in the way that
the tone is different. The Halloween tone is different than Freddy versus Jason.
They're definitely more over the top to work together in such a movie.
Yeah. If I had to relate the relationship between Freddy and Jason to a non-horror person, my first thing I would ask them is, have you ever seen T2? Because it's that same thing with the T800 and the T1000. It's Jason is the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator. He's the tank. He is just the immovable object. And Freddy is the T1000. He's got the moves. He's got the humor. He's got, he's a Lamborghini. He's a sports car to Jason's tank.
Right. Which, speaking of that, and also going back to Kane Hodder, who they replaced for this movie with Ken Kersinger, who was much taller, more of a, compared to Kane, I feel like he's more slender, more sleek of a Jason, but I don't care for the replacement. I think it should have been Kane Hodder. I feel like a lot of Freddy fans wanted it to be Kane, and that's a big black mark on this movie for me, and I think a lot of Friday fans that was part of the ingredient that a lot of us wanted in the days, like Freddy versus Jason, but Robert Englund versus Kane Hodder. And I know he doesn't have quite the lineage that Englund had for Freddy, but I mean, he'd only done like he hadn't been Jason the whole time, right? Like there'd been other people do it
Right.
before him.
There's been a few Jasons.
But there was
How many? What percentage of fans, Chris, do you think were clamoring for like Ari Lehman versus? Uh,
what would be the percentage of just Ari Lehman?
yeah, oh, yeah, one vote. Two. Ari and his mother were voting. So.
But yeah, man, I still am bummed out that that is not what happened. And when you get into the weeds of it and why there was this change, and it's just like that, then it starts to go into areas that bum me out about this movie. And
Yeah. Well, it was money, wasn't it? Was it money?
no,
That's what I always kind of believe.
it's because he was taller. They wanted a taller Jason and one that was more sympathetic in appearance, because they wanted him to kind of be,
The
you
good
know,
guy.
yeah, essentially.
I mean, I talked to Jackie about this because your niece watched this movie with me out of the blue. And Chris, I forgot to bring this up. I was going to bring this up at the top of the show. Guess how we watched it?
Blu-ray?
We watched it on Blu-ray.
Nice.
And guess where that Blu-ray came from?
Free Amazon?
That was the gift bestowed, the blessing passed to my family of the Friday the 13th box set.
With a damaged box that I tried to fix, but
oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm looking at it right now on my shelf, and it is absolutely a thing of beauty. We watched this, and I told Jackie, I further enticed her by saying I also have a really poor quality DVD set of the Friday the 13th TV show if you're interested in that. And it has almost nothing to do with Jason Voorhees or anything related.
Quick
to the
aside,
movies.
Dave, did you know that David Cronenberg directed one of those episodes?
Wow. I did not know that.
Yes.
You didn't have to say that. I already love that show.
Me too. Mine's sitting right next to my box set up there. So what did she think of this, being a younger person? I mean, this movie is now 20 years old.
Yeah.
Or getting ready to be 20, almost.
So we watched it, got kind of late, so I barely got her opinion before she went to bed. Overall, and Jackie, I guess you're gonna have to follow on Spotify and comment on the socials if you want to clear the record here. But I think in general that Jackie was a fan. I think that she came out of it with a greater appreciation of what 80s horror, especially like 80s slasher horror, was. Because I told her, like, Freddy versus Jason here, it is what 80s horror is about. It's not really at its best. It's not heavy, depressing, emotional, take it seriously. Like, what? Okay, this is more serious than the Ari Lehman question. What percentage of people do you think watch these movies, Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, in order to root for the bad guy?
You can't say this is more serious than the Ari Lehman question and expect me to function after that. Hold on. Whew.
I mean, obviously that was a serious question.
Hold on.
Intended only for Ari Lehman and his mother.
That one got me deep.
I got you, bitch.
This is more serious than the Ari Lehman question.
What percent? I mean, I would say
that made me a little bit lightheaded. Okay. What's the question? Hold on, I'm sorry.
What percentage of people watch Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street? I'll even say Halloween. What percentage of people watch those movies in order to root for the bad guy? So leave Halloween out because you have a recurring heroine with Lori, so maybe you build a connection to her.
Ish,
but
right.
you know, Nancy. Fuck Nancy. How many people want to see Nancy? You don't watch Nightmare on Elm Street to watch Nancy.
I mean,
And
even Friday had even less than that. I mean, there was a
yeah, yeah.
couple like
Again,
Tommy Jarvis was, but he was a different actor in every fucking appearance he had. So
yeah, and he's responsible for half of Jason's stat kills.
yeah,
So Tommy, what are you doing? Electrocuting a dead corpse and bringing it back to life, you fucking Frankenstein motherfucker.
so
So
yeah,
what?
it's the spectacle, right? Like you're watching it for the the death and murders and the carnage and the slashing.
Yep,
You're
yep,
not watching it to see if X number or whoever of civilians of Nancy's or Tommy's makes it or whatever. Each I feel like each series has just a hint of that. Like you had your Dream Warriors, and then the Dream
yeah.
Master had a little bit. I mean, it wasn't as good. And then also, I guess you could kind of apply that to more to Tommy than comparing him to Nancy, I guess. But I mean, but still, by and
It's
large, it's
about the
for
villains.
them. Yeah,
It's
it's for
villain
them.
driven.
Yeah,
It's not something that you. It's the anti-modern horror.
yeah,
Modern horror is very much about not just the scare, but it's the emotion that I go through. It's this journey. It's what does it mean? What's the layers?
hmm
There's no depth to Friday the 13th, and there's no depth to Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's okay.
Plus, that
I've
was like dream time of effects, right? Like it was a part of it was just to see like what cool shit the makeup people could do.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And kills blood. We want to see boobs, we want to see blood, we wanted to see
Check, check,
bodies.
check.
The three B's.
And like, how are they going
So
to kill him this time? That was a thing for me. Like, how are they going to kill him this
yeah,
time?
yeah. I feel like so that's why between the two, Jason takes top spot for me because I just felt like yeah, the machete, but there was for someone who was grounded to the physical world, there was so much variety of kills.
Right.
Now, in theory, you could have gone crazy with Freddy, and
Yeah.
some of them really got into that. Like the one that was in the comic book, and then he uses his thumb to blow himself up and become Super Freddy, and he's like, I mean, there is some cool shit in the Freddy, but it's most of them really of the Nightmare on Elm Streets are like the Green Lantern of horror movies. That there's so much
Yeah.
potential that's kind of left on the cutting room floor. Like, and I mean, I get it. How do
And
you
now that
put these things on film?
makes me really pissed that we've not had more modern Freddy. I don't care that if it's Jackie Earl Haley. I'm going to come back around on that in a little while. But just the ability, the techniques and CGI and stuff now, which they touched on a little bit in the scene with Shadow Freddy when he's trying to when he
Hmm.
is possessing his own shadow and trying to stab dude, but he's like weak. He's still too weak to do anything. I'm like,
Yeah,
God, why is there not more stuff like that with Freddy? And they could absolutely do fucking crazy, really trippy kind of things like that. Um, and I granted, in the '80s, that wasn't really a possibility, but this was the first time that was a big thing and more apparent. And I've really just been dying for more of that. And if they ever do bring Freddy back, I really want more of that, more trippy, like wow, like
yeah.
he's really fucking with the state of things and reality. I think that's the arena Freddy needs to occupy if he comes back. But anyways, I want to talk next about the director, Ronnie Yu. So they brought Ronnie in. He initially said no. There was a group. Rob Zombie said no. He went off to do with House of a Thousand Corpses. A couple other people also passed on it, But they circled back around and got Ronnie Yu to accept. But he got a lot of creative freedom with his acceptance to that, for better or worse. And horror fans know him more probably. Well, shit, maybe not more probably. Maybe in addition to, but Bride of Chucky, and
Yeah.
maybe at the time I would have said that, but they also didn't want somebody that was a fan of the franchise prior to making this, which is so
Which blows my mind when
fucking
people say
stupid.
that shit.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a fan dream. Why would you not want that input on? eh, But I'll be honest. I don't like the direction in this movie whatsoever. Whatsoever. He does shots in this, like, those kind of like weird frames per second shots where it kind of is slowed down, but like in a herky jerky kind of a manner. I don't know what they call that. I'm not going to pretend, but like there's things like that that just look bad. It looks bad.
Well, it's obvious this was kind of the age of the we really wanted some effects that we could turn into 3D stuff.
Mm.
So I'm sorry, I'm stepping all over your
No,
comment.
I want you in here with me. But yeah, I mean, do you know what I'm talking about? Like those weird, like he slows it down, but a lot of times it seems like whenever there's kills happening, like the big action shots, it'll do that. Like it almost looks like Into the Spider-Verse. You know how they kind of chopped that frames per second up, and it feels fine in that because it's animated, but in this it just feels bad to me. It looks bad to me. And I've watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Never Sleep Again is a great documentary on the entirety of the Nightmare franchise. If you've never watched it, it's very long. It's great though. A lot of actors give their thoughts and stuff, and there's stuff on Freddy versus Jason, and he just Ronnie Yu. Me and him's gonna have words if we ever meet. Is all I can say. That's all I can say, Dave. You're gonna have to hold me
Watch
back.
out, Ronnie.
Like first it was the new
Watch
Jason, and then it was Ronnie Yu, and just some of the decisions in this don't work for me. And I'm gonna. Should I get all my negative stuff out, or should we just kind of chop it up and interweave?
I mean, if we want to get the negatives out, that's fine for me because then we just come around to the positives, and I feel like there are positives here. So let's get the negatives
Okay.
out.
I think the writing is so bad, and I know you like we've been talking about it. Like you don't go into this expecting Amadeus or what the fuck ever, right? But
Right.
we've talked about this in person. Like the line where Lori is like, Freddy died by fire, Jason by water. How can we use that against them? Is this Pokemon? I don't know.
I was telling Jackie because again, Jackie has never seen a Nightmare movie, and she's never seen a Friday the 13th movie.
Right.
So this is her first foray into that, and I think it went well because I think it's a good introduction. I think she will be interested in getting in. I don't know if I can get her to go all the way back to Friday the 13th one and two. I don't know if she can go back to that. We might, maybe because the Bacon effect. Kevin Bacon is really fucking hot in the pop culture right now, the zeitgeist.
So I think maybe the first great Friday death is Kevin Bacon.
Yeah. No, there are so many in that one. Jason, like I said, Jason, the dude knew how to kill with flair. I mean, he had some flair. He had dramatic chops that were waiting to get out. Yeah. But
the overall story in this, it don't fit for me. I don't like it. I don't like the actors by and large. I don't like the actors in this. There are two bright spots. let me hold one before I get to the actors. The Hypnosil story, right? Like the drug, the
Mhm.
suppressing dreams, I think is a cool idea, but I don't think it made it. And I think there was a little bit of that in Dream Warriors. I don't know if they called it Hypnosil, but I think there was something that they were doing, or maybe they
Yeah.
mentioned
Yep.
it in
Yep.
passing. I think that's really cool, and it could have been done very interesting, but I don't think it was here. But the two bright spot actors for me. Can you guess? Can you guess which two I'm talking about?
I'm gonna say um, Monica Keena.
No.
'Cause
Th-
she's pretty fire.
she does have two bright spots though.
She is pretty fire.
She-
Um,
I'll delete that
so
later.
I will tell you who I thought acting wise probably did the best, and he's really kind of a more minor character. I thought Brendan Fletcher did a great job.
Absolutely. That's my number
Yeah,
one.
yep.
This made me a Brendan Fletcher. It made me a Fletch head. Whenever I see him, I'm
It,
like, "There's fucking Brendan Fletcher." I've watched Uwe Boll movies just because he's in them, and they're terrible, terrible.
he's really got some acting chops. I
I
mean,
love him. I
he's
think
all
he's
over the
great.
place. Yeah. So
Um, so my second one. Do you who's your second? Do you have a second one? This one mine will spawn more discussion. So speak now, if you have one.
I I'm I don't really think
And you met,
anyone stands out to me. I'm a Kelly Rowland fan from Destiny's Child, but I thought she was too one dimensional here.
yeah.
Um,
I'm a big
so
Catherine Elizabeth fan. But she dies so early in this.
mhm.
God, I love Ginger Snaps. I think she's fantastic.
Well, I hated the character, and then
Yeah,
that's
she's nothing.
I
She really is nothing
yeah
in this. Um,
yeah I can always separate the character from the actor as well, but I didn't care for the character. So
so for me, Zach Ward playing the brother of Brendan Fletcher of Mark,
okay,
who we all remember as the fucking bully from A Christmas Story.
yep, yep.
And listen, I may be off base, Dave. People may come after me, but he has a brief appearance in this movie, and he's being, played air quotes by Freddy Krueger. Um, why was he not the replacement for Freddy Krueger instead of Jackie Earl Haley? I would kill still for him to do it, and I don't know why, because I think he showed in this to me that he is the next best thing to that.
I think he looks
And
the
he looks a
part
little,
well. I think
yeah.
he's more menacing than Jackie Earl. But I mean, you got to remember the time. What is the time frame for Watchmen? Um,
Still a couple years at least. 2000,
oh,
what was that? Six,
2009. So 9
nine,
years difference. Wow.
6 years.
Um, okay, okay.
To get that name though,
I
yeah,
don't know.
you're not
But
gonna.
Jackie Earl. I think he like already kind of buzzy before he did
Oh yeah,
anything.
but
Um,
I mean, I don't even think you need a name worthy person for that franchise, right? It's Freddy Krueger. I swear to God, I'll die on this hill. Zach Ward should have been the next Freddy. Watching that scene where he's in the bathtub and he just has that Freddiness to him, and I, I fuck in my perfect reality, that's where it would have went from. Like, okay, we're gonna start this up. You did great. You're gonna carry the torch. You're gonna be the new one, and it wouldn't be that big of a change.
yeah.
Makeup
Yeah, yeah.
depending, movie depending, but
I could see that. I'll be down with you. I'm going to join your campaign, Chris. I'm
uh,
going hard. I'm hard in the paint. in with you.
welcome aboard.
Zach Ward for the Nightmare reboot, which is apparently going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll start
well,
campaigning soon. Soon.
I need a recent picture of Zach. I mean, I don't want him to be too methed out. So, and I think that's what Jackie Earl Haley did. Like he went too methed out a little bit. The makeup is the biggest problem for me for the
Yeah.
Freddy
Yeah.
reboot. Is like the makeup sucks. I know they wanted to make it look more authentic, but
It just
it
isn't.
ended up
It
just
isn't
being
great.
looking more sad.
Yeah. He looks like a dog you left out in the sun more than a serial killer.
Yeah, yeah.
Last thing on the actors. So speaking of that Never Sleep Again documentary, there was a great part in that where Freeberg, right, the stoner in the movie, they're talking about the movie, and then it cuts to Jason Mewes from Jay and Silent Bob fame, right? And he's like, "Oh, I love doing this movie. This was so fucking fun." And then he's like, "Wait, I wasn't in this fucking movie," and then gets up and walks off. It was perfect because anybody that watches this is like, is that Jason Mewes? That's not Jason Mewes. This is Big Lots Jason Mewes.
Big
And
loss, Jason Hughes.
it absolutely was, and it absolutely was supposed to be. I mean, ugh. Cool. It reminds me of the whole Freeberg part reminds me of the not Super Freddy, but the Nintendo Freddy from Freddy's Dead when he's playing the Power Glove with the kid tripping out in the video game. That was a cool moment.
Yeah.
But
If I can throw a negative in here, and you kind of touched on already the script and the writing.
mhm.
I pointed out to Jackie because I didn't want to okay, if this leads to us down the road of watching some Friday the 13th, I'm probably going to start with the 2009 reboot. Jared Padalecki, somebody that she's familiar with, and we can do it. And I think it's a great homage to the original series, and then we can get into the good stuff, the originals. But
with Derek Mears, who's fucking fantastic. I've not watched the Swamp Thing
I
yet,
thought Derek is great.
but
But
because I know they ended it too soon.
I
But
pointed out to Jackie because I didn't want her to go in with the wrong idea when we see it and be like, "Oh, I've got this preconceived notion. Jason's afraid of water."
right.
Where the
Yeah,
you only come up with that. You don't do that. Makes such a big mistake if you get somebody who is a fan who's actually watched the fucking movies
yeah. It's
and who knows.
Pokemon
Yeah, he
Red,
drowned.
Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, sure, he drowned, but he's in the lake in I think every single fucking movie
Yeah,
except for Jason X and maybe Jason Goes to Hell.
yeah. I think you're right. I mean, there's no anything ever that was like Jason's scared of water. That's so
So
stupid.
it's bullshit weaknesses. I don't really I can accept Jason sleeping because you have to have some mechanic to get them
Yeah.
together. I
Yeah,
like
you're right.
the idea of Jason feeds on fear. That's pretty well established in and out of the Friday the 13th franchise or the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So, um, I like that. I like the if I can hold him, I can pull him into this. I really
Which
like the
has
scene when they get
had
together.
been shown before in earlier movies, right? Like there was
Yeah,
some of
I
that.
like that scene where she figures that out.
Yeah.
Like when she's sitting on the couch and everybody's on the table, and her friend's like, oh yeah,
But that's also
we could fuck.
also the Pokemon scene, unfortunately.
That yeah. It's okay, honey. Give Daddy a kiss. It's got the right creepiness. It's got the Freddy factor in general that outside of some of the acting,
which I mean,
parts of that have the good Freddy.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, like,
vibe.
did any of the originals have that great a caliber acting, even from the main men themselves? Like, So I can kind
No,
of
no,
forgive
no.
some of that in this, as far as that goes. Um, but let's now go for a moment into the CGI, into the special effects. Before we get quite into the special effects, I hate Freddy's makeup in this movie. I think it's
Okay.
the worst he's ever looked.
It even the remake
Not considering that.
or not
Yeah,
that
not
bad?
considering that
Not
yet.
that. Okay, you got to leave
Yeah,
that one
that
aside.
one.
That's its own
Yeah, that
tier.
one hasn't existed yet. Like up to 2003, we'll say. And they do this weird alternate Freddy makeup at one point that's like witch-ish like, and it is, I hate it even more. I hate it even more. And they're like competently done, and they're not technically bad, but the design and like of it reminds me of part 5, the Dream Child makeup, which is very, to me, is the worst he'd looked prior to that. Which was very plasticky and fake looking, like
Yeah, yeah.
homogenized, factory pressed latex Freddy is how I'd say.
It definitely looks like to me. I wonder if and you've done some behind the scenes stuff. Excuse me. But you've seen some of the behind the scenes stuff, so you might know better. It seems to me like at some point Robert England said, "You know what? I don't want to sit in the chair for so
Oh,
long.
right.
How can we streamline this
That's a
process?"
good point.
And the makeup suffered.
That is a very good point. I didn't think of that. And it, like watching it, I watched it again today just to get uh, just to get into it a little more. And God, it literally looks to me, I mean, what you said is a great point. It just looks like something he could just take off and
Yeah.
okay, now I can go to fucking Applebee's and I'm good. Um, it's like Freddy in bulk. It's factory Freddy. It doesn't look cool. It doesn't look scary to me. And I mean, Jason isn't much better, but I'm not that. I think he looks all right. The back of the head is different. Like the skin, the baldness, the whatever that is of Jason is different in every single fucking movie. I mean, Freddy's different in every
Mhm.
movie too, but like it's more pronounced with Jason because they don't know what they're doing. I guess they're
Yeah.
like, we'll do whatever, it's whatever. It's our time now. Um,
But
but this one, it's whatever. It's kind of whatever to me. But the CGI,
yeah,
I don't want to cut you
I
off. What do you got? What do you
the
got?
scene we just talked off the air
Mhm.
about the scene where he rips off Kelly Rowland's
Right.
nose, and that is I think the worst CGI shot in the whole film. Um,
I
and I don't think it's close. It's
I
really
I
bad.
put it up there next to Shadow Freddy, which I love the idea of both of them. I fucking love the idea of both of them. But I mean, obviously, the Kelly Rowland scene with practical effects, give me a break. That would have been rad. That would have been so
Well,
rad.
they even made it more egregious because they kind of slowed it down a little bit, and like
Yeah,
they tried. It was an attempt. Was this available in 3D? Because it really looks like there's a lot of things that they intended. Oh, we can
maybe.
turn this into a 3D effect.
There's no
Um,
release that I remember being in 3D.
I didn't remember, but there's so much that looks like it's intended for that.
Very, yeah. I mean, this was like right on the
Um,
cusp of it at least.
if they did the nose, even with the horrible CGI that they used,
Hmm.
if they did it quicker and
Without that Ronnie
showed
Yu
it and moved
direction.
on, but they like, yeah, they like, oh, this is gonna be good. We're gonna focus on this
Yeah.
because this is gonna be some hot fucking shit. And it was hot shit. It was hot garbage shit. So,
And I think later on, like in the big fight, which we've not even fucking got to yet, by the way, the big fight between the
mm-mm.
two behemoths. You know, there's that part where Freddy's up on well, I don't even know where they're fighting. Like they're on the beat the shores of Crystal Lake. But like there's construction or something going on. I don't know what that fucking shit is.
Not what are they
Yeah,
constructing?
like another
Because it's
cabin,
a big
but it ain't.
U-shaped scaffolding
Yeah.
tower with a giant ramp, and like they're mining crystal ore out of the
Yeah.
sky.
And
Then they have all the acetylene tanks.
the part oh my god, oh my god. We're not even into the fight, Dave. This is gonna be a long episode. This is just gonna have to be. But the part where Freddy throws like the rebar down onto Jason is
Yeah,
CGI as fuck. But it's such a cool idea. It's such a
it
cool
is.
idea.
I love it.
And
I
he's
love
getting
it.
like
Yep.
stapled to the ground by this shit. And I'm like, I fucking great idea. But
Well,
then
even before that, in the boiler room of Jason's mind, or it's not when Freddy's pinballing Jason.
mhm,
It's super ridiculous, and I loved it, man. I loved it. It made me chuckle. It's very Freddy.
yeah. I've saw some complaints as I was just looking through shit this last week or two about that scene, and I'm like, I could go either way. I can, because I got a foot in both camps. Like I'm not just a Jason guy. I'm also a Freddy guy.
Uh-huh.
I think I love them both. So, uh, it is weird to be more rooted in the reality of a Jason and be like he's in a pinball machine. Like I understand the
Yeah.
criticism of it, but also you got to take it from the Freddy perspective as well and be like that is very Freddy.
Yeah. Yep.
Um. Well,
The rave. What did you think about when Jason interrupts the rave and he just comes in
if
fucking
there wasn't that Ronnie Yu
slaughtering?
slow down bullshit, I thought it was great. But
There
Ronnie Yu ruins it again.
there was one set of kills where there were like two high school frat broy dudes that are just they're like shaking their cups in there and like but they're also waiting for the actor to come over and slice them
Yeah.
one at a time, and it's so obvious.
Yeah.
It took me out a little bit, but
And that walk with Ken Kersinger as Jason on fire, I feel like there was some kind of record he set with that. Because it was a very long on fire walk that
yeah,
he did. And I'm pretty sure it was him. Which he
very cool.
like Kane Hodder was a stuntman going into being Jason for the first time. So he was ready to do all the shit, which is, as much as I don't like him as Jason, I can at least respect what he did. But yeah, another cool, I mean, it's not just a cool idea. I think it's a great idea. But Ronnie Yu, once again, gets into the fucking weeds of the whole fucking shit. And fucking, I don't know what he's trying to do. I mean, I don't get what he's about. I guess is probably more apt. He is just I don't get the Ronnie Yu approach.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I it's not the greatest. Um, and you can tell that we're not talking about someone who's a fan of the franchise,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it is a kind of a laid back, just get the kills in slasher movie. He has this extra depth of I don't have one villain, I have two villains, and I have to find a way to bring the ultimate terror of the physical world and the ultimate terror of the dream world, and I have to find a way to, collide them.
Yeah.
And so that's a crazy big task.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, there was more to it being in development hell for almost 15 years than simply just
What?
different studios, right? I mean, putting these
Yeah,
two characters that are in completely different realms is a
yeah,
tall
yeah.
order.
Different tones of
Right.
movies, different, the Craven New Line camp. They wanted Freddy to win,
Yeah. That whole thing
and
is
yeah, and the Friday the 13th camp. They wanted Jason to win.
maybe it's like,
So
like I was saying, like I loved Freddy, I love Jason. I kind of lean more towards Jason, especially because my wife's such a Freddy stan, and I want to be opposition in that regard. It's why I lean more Friday.
you're
Um, but even then, like I didn't give a fucking shit who won. Like it's the spectacle of the whole thing that I'm after.
yep,
Like,
yep.
are you gonna watch Stone Cold versus Bret Hart and be like, oh God, no, you just want to see whatever it ends up being is what it ends up being. Is how I felt. But did you feel that way? Like, did you have one? You're like, oh, if it's not this one, we riot.
No, so going into it like first watch, I did not care. I kind of figured it would end with some kind of neutral, like
Right, right.
uh
Ambiguous,
whoever
like
wins,
whoever.
you're gonna get a wink to the fact that the other one won,
Literally,
and then you literally got that.
literally. Which I
Um,
liked. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie,
but
honestly.
yeah, but I it don't that so I knew I was gonna get that, so I didn't care if it was Freddy triumphant, and then at the end, like Jason opens his eyes again,
Right, right.
and then you go to black. I, that would have been fine to me. I don't care, even though I lean Jason.
Hmm.
But I lean Jason pretty hard. Um, but I wouldn't have cared. It would not have bothered me.
Just the fact that it
So
existed, right? Like I feel like we're both in that
yeah, oh
arena
yeah,
of
yeah.
like just the fact that it happened. Like we're just happy it happened.
Yeah, yeah. This is more of that a peaceful acceptance thing. Namaste.
Yeah.
Uh,
What well, I got a couple other real quick things that I want to talk about before we get to our overalls. One, did you know that Rey Mysterio was a stunt double for Freddy Krueger in this movie? Rey Mysterio.
what? Really?
Yes, he was. He was. I only learned that as we were making the episode, and I thought I remembered something about Rey Mysterio showing up in the cast list, and I'm like, he must have just been an extra somewhere. But then I found out no, he was actually a stunt double for fucking Robert England. At least in I think I saw something that said the boiler room scene. So I guess when he was fighting Jason that first
Okay.
time in the dream world, he may have been. Which is weird because I think there is a pretty big difference in physique and height between him and Robert England. Rey Mysterio is not a big guy. Uh,
No, no.
but yeah. So Rey Mysterio as Freddy, I have information to give my wife now. Be like, hey, what does Rey Mysterio and Freddy have in common? You can use it on your wives as well. They may not reply as well. That's fine. But
They may throw themselves
yeah.
at you. Who knows?
Or it may throw you out. Use it at your own discretion. But okay, so there's that. And lastly, one of the things about this movie being in development hell for so long, having so many different scripts, one of which was like a more of a new nightmare thing. Have you looked at any of the ideas that were planned for this that never happened?
The big one, not really. The big one I knew or heard about was that Ash
Yeah.
Williams was
Mhm.
not Ash Ketchum from Pokemon, but Ash Williams I heard was going to be third party.
That was a big thing and did become a comic series for a while,
Hmm.
which I've never read. I'm not a big fan of continuations of movies into those different mediums for some. I just want to like if you're not going to make it, then it's not for me. Typically. Prove me wrong though. But like there was one script that had Jason more in this kind of reality where he was real, kind of like in that New Nightmare vein, right? And he was on trial for the crimes he'd committed, and then that led into a cult of Freddy Krueger that were trying to resurrect Freddy Krueger. It was it was some weird shit, and it's out there to read. But weird, and that's just one of the ideas that they were potentially going to do before it got to what came out. Um, and
I, I
go ahead.
I think that you're always going to start with the wildest
But
ideas,
yeah, I mean,
and then you start thinking, okay, what can we actually accomplish?
yeah,
What can we actually do? So,
yeah. But there was that, and I mean, the idea is interesting. I like the idea of it, but I don't know that I would have liked the movie of it. But the ending that I wish we could have gotten, because then it starts to bring things even more, um, more Abbott and Costello-y, and it was the ending with Pinhead, where, Freddy and Jason in that final scene are beating the fucking shit out of each other, and then hooks spawn from the earth and hook into them and drag them down to hell into this big arena coliseum kind of setting where Pinhead is presiding, and he says something to the effect of "What seems to be the problem?" in the movie, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I would sacrifice so many goats to make this a reality," but obviously nobody asked me. But he was also owned by a third studio that just made it impossible to
okay.
happen. But could you
Right,
imagine?
right. That would be pretty cool. You could still do that. I mean, imagine if you did that and Ash. Like, why not get all four if we're dreaming?
Yeah. But I mean,
Um,
Pinhead, like we
a-
talked about Michael Myers, right? Like I feel like Pinhead could fit into this world much easier because he's,
a little more
yeah,
fantastical.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And God, I would. That was my dream for this ending. God, once I read, I or some maybe it was in one of the special features behind the scenes things talking about it, and it's just like God, what could have been. Um, I love it. And the idea of, Pinhead's chains coming out and you immediately being caught off guard, very much like, the claw coming out and taking Jason's mask and Jason goes to hell, like a different kind of callback to that. Minds could have been blown. But I mean,
Definitely. Definitely.
rich people ruin everything in some regards. It's so bad. Um,
They're like, no, I need another $1 million.
yeah. But the last thing that I want to talk about, I'm hogging the mic, but modern metal music was was a big thing for this soundtrack, which goes in line with the original, Friday and Freddy, that 80s. I mean, back then it was more of a hair bandy kind of uh here and there in the soundtrack, and that's the fact that they leaned more into a modern metal at the time, with Slipknot and Seven Dust and Lamb of God, with the soundtrack, which I picked the three that I loved the most out of what was on the soundtrack. There was some other ones that I'm not big into, but I thought it was such a great idea to make it more current at the time, and that's I think a great idea, and I'm glad they did it.
Yeah. We've, Chris, I don't know if you know this, but we did a whole episode about music and sound design, and we barely scratched the surface of what the fusion between pop music and horror. And when I say music, I mean not pop music, but metal.
Yeah,
Um, and it's just works so well when it's done right, and
absolutely.
it's great.
They're
It's great.
great
I
pairings. Like they just chocolate and peanut butter, man. They just work. naturally.
Well, this is the Reese Cup of movies, so that's a perfect callback itself. You know, you got a little Jason in my
Right.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right.
Oh, you got a little bit of Freddy in my Friday the 13th.
Um,
So
is there any other things you want to go over for the movie at large before we get into our overall opinions and rate this bitch?
yeah, I do just want to
Tell me.
profess my enjoyment of this movie. We've both taken some time to pick some things into this movie,
Mm,
but I think in general um the general tone is right, even if they made some kind of terrible decisions. Um, it's got some boobies right at the start of the movie, and that ain't bad. Um, it's it's got you know 20 something teenagers, 25-year-old teenagers
right.
running around. It's got some classic kills. The first dude, Blake, when Blake gets killed, that's actually a very Michael Myers kill to me.
The bed?
Maybe because in the first Halloween you have that bedroom kill.
Right, right.
So I don't know if that was an intentional homage or unconscious theft or blatant plagiarism. But
I will I
it
will tell you, I saw this movie in the theaters because I've been like we
okay.
talked about. I was there for it. I was dying for it. Saw it. This was the first horror movie I saw in the theater where people were laughing at the kills, which I'd come to find out is a thing. Some people do, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't understand. I don't claim to even try to understand. But that's just maybe it's just where I like to. Maybe I'm wondering like, oh fuck, how did they do that? Or I'm trying to be more in the moment, like, oh my god, that's fucking crazy. Other people are like just hee haw and having a great time, which is totally fair. But I was not prepared for that, and that bed in half, I had to
Mhm.
quickly become okay with that.
Yeah, I'm a laugh at the kills guy. I'm a cool kills guy. It depends. Whether I laugh or am horrified depends on my emotional attachment.
Mhm.
And for classic slashers like this,
The
there's
spectacle,
really not much. Yeah, it's about the spectacle. It's about the blood. I want to see some blood. I want to see some cool kills. Um, I mean, if it says anything about whether I need psychological help, one of my favorite kills of the entire you know Friday the 13th franchise is sleeping bag against the tree kill.
right?
It's so good. It's so good. And I used to camp so much as a child and slept in a sleeping bag that it's such a good kill, and it also it does both. It kind of titillates and makes me laugh, but also it's kind of in the back of my mind scary because I spent so much time in sleeping bags when I was young. So
Fair enough. That said, Dave, are you ready to hit an ad? We'll come back in the whorehouse and we will rate this bitch, give our overall thoughts before we are out. We are back and it is time to rate this movie before we get out of here. I'm going to go first. Dave,
yeah,
we are of two camps as per usual. This fits into the line of Dave rates high, I rate low. And as much as I can praise this movie, I also don't like this movie.
okay.
And I I unfortunately think this is the worst movie in both franchises by a long shot.
Not counting the
A lot of
remakes
that
or
has to do with
counting the
Ronnie
remake.
Yu. Not even
Okay.
counting the remakes. Um, up to 2003. Um, and God, just I mean, I seen this in the theater. This is one of the first movies I remember walking out, and I looked at she's my girlfriend there. She's my wife now, who's a big Freddy person, and looking at her and being like, that was it. that was the movie that I've been waiting so many years for.
Let down.
Um,
Wah wah.
yeah. And like I mentioned earlier, like I would get Fangoria month after month, just hoping there was like a paragraph of something. And my dad at the time, like I was 20 when this movie came out. My dad gave me like $20. He's like, "Go watch your movie," because he knew how long I'd been waiting to go watch it. And he was the one buying the Fangorias for me as a like 13-year-old.
Nice, nice.
He's like, "Go watch your fucking movie," and that was that was pretty cool. I wish it had been a movie I had enjoyed more. And I feel like I've went over my grievances with it. Just a lot of that has to do with the story and the direction. I feel like the actors would have been fine. Um, and Brendan Fletcher is fantastic. Zach Ward, I swear, if I had the power, you'd be my next Freddy. But that doesn't save you from the fucking judgment of Chris in the whorehouse and Dave. Unfortunately. Unfucking fortunately. I have to give this movie. Are you
I'm
ready?
ready. I'm ready. I have steeled my nerves.
A 3 out of 10.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
A 3 out of 10. Like I said, worst movie of both franchises by far.
You heard that, guys. Chris
so
does
much
not
more.
like Freddy. He does not like Jason. He does not like slasher movies. He prefers elevated horror like the Babadook. That's what I hear.
What did you think I was going to rate this?
I thought going into the night, there's no way I would have said that. But over the course of the night, I thought you were aiming pretty low. And so I said 4.5.
Okay, that's fair. At one point I was 2.5, but I was like, that's not fair. I gotta, But there we go. I was kind of concerned because I knew you were not picking up my distaste of this movie at a point, and I was like, oh man, I gotta make it known, or Dave's gonna.
I mean, there are
Dave's gonna quit.
There are things that could be improved. I didn't think Kersinger did horribly. I don't think I don't want to say it's not possible to do Jason bad, because it absolutely is.
I mean, there's been so many different approaches.
But I mean, in general, he's the strong silent type.
The tank. I loved the description.
So
the tank.
You get a
hit us up with your rating and your overalls, and just get into all of it. Tell me how
I actually do agree that this is the this is probably the second worst Jason movie. Jason Goes to Hell. And this is probably and I'm counting the remakes, and this is probably the second worst Freddy movie, with the Freddy remake being the worst. I probably would rate this a little bit higher than I did if I hadn't pretty recently watched New Nightmare. Because my nostalgia told me New Nightmare was not great, but I actually really enjoyed it. It's
a weird kind of, it became a sleeper over the years, which is so weird.
And it's got this weird meta thing that Wes Craven would replicate with Scream. So it's very forward thinking slasher, where this is not. This is an homage to, hey, let's take these two characters that the cash cow is starting to run dry. People are starting to not be as into these rerun characters anymore. We let's get one last money grab out
Right.
of them. But
Let's pull the teat of this cow
yeah,
one more time.
but I feel like the kills were still, there were a lot of them. They were varied. They were bloody. Yes, the CGI sucks, and yes, there are some issues with some of the story, but also there's some really cool stuff here. And so I like it. It's a big undertaking to bring these two guys together. But I
Yes.
think they did good. Are you ready?
I am ready.
I went a solid 7. Um,
I thought you was gonna go
okay,
8.
okay. I probably would have gone to 7.5 if it wasn't for New Nightmare recent watch. But I only dropped the half. Um, it, 1 to 10 is such a tight scale that I probably would have rated some of the other of the movies in these two franchises right at the same. But I really do think that there are only 2 movies that I would rate lower than a 7 out of both franchises, 2 total. So I like the Friday the 13th reboot from 2009 with Jared Padalecki. I do like that because it's the Force Awakens of Friday the 13th. It's a reboot, but
It
really
really, yeah.
it's a homage. We take all the nostalgia and we cram it into a movie, and
Yeah.
so it's just good, relaxed fun. And
Yeah.
I like it.
There we have it. There are our ratings. I feel like we barely even touched on the actual fight of the
We'll have to
two.
save that for when we do the subs, when we do the subs or Patreons
Yeah.
or.
I mean, that I feel like that would be a whole at least another hour or an hour long discussion. And we've already like blown our cutting the fat for the new season out on this one. Because I mean, yeah, how can but you have so much to talk about, 2 franchises and 2 histories and leading up to it. It's hard to not talk about all that and convey the
Yeah.
feelings of
Yeah.
what this
And we didn't
was.
even talk about Jason as a Deadite. We didn't talk about um, any of those things. So,
But if you want these things to happen, if you want to hear some more of these things, the best way you can do that, if you agree or disagree with us as well, Dave, tell them how they can get that ball
um,
rolling.
first off, message us, tell us that you're interested in those things on the Twitters at Sweetness1 with 6 E's or at Horror House 2 because there's 2 of us and you have to type it all out. Um,
You can email us, horrorhousepodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to the Horror House page on Facebook.
You can leave us a voicemail on anchor.fm/horror house. I think.
You think?
I think you can leave us a voicemail on Anchor. So,
Oh, as it's still there as
okay.
of right now. We'll see what happens. Finally, please share us around, share us to your friends, rate, like, favorite, all of that. Let the world know that you like the horror house and you want to be in the horror house with us. And the beer caught up to me for a second, but I'm fine.
We're begging for those Spotify follows. That's our goal.
The Spotify.
Our goal is
Yes,
100
we
Spotify
need.
follows. If you got alternate emails, set up. Nothing's stopping you from setting up multiple free accounts and following.
Yeah.
So, hey, it is what it is. And it will just go to help us to provide more and better content for you.
And with that said, We will be back next week. Same Horror House time, same Horror House channel. Until then, Dave, any final words?
I look forward to continuing this uh, disagreement over movies with you, Chris. One of these days, I'm gonna have you see the light, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, you're right. Every movie deserves to be at least a 5."
However, we have agreed completely on one movie this season. We were the same, which you said has happened before, but I'm drunk every time this ends, so I don't remember the episode so
Yeah, I don't
much.
remember where. I
But
know
that's
it
on me.
has. Either that, or I'm experiencing deja vu, or Mandela affecting my brain. So I don't know.
We will be back in a week. We will see you guys then. We are out.
Thanks for listening. Bye.